Hi, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Purpose Project. All topics are fair game. I hope you enjoy. Mark Finchem, welcome to my studio. Welcome to my house. How's the audio in those headphones? That work okay?
I think it's good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good deal. Then we'll get right to it.
Yeah.
So I read a little bit of your bio. You're out of Michigan. You're from Michigan?
Kalamazoo, Michigan. Well,
Okay.
outside of Kalamazoo, little farm town called Delton, Delton, in Berry County.
Right on. And you were born and raised there, right?
Well, I was actually born in Detroit,
Okay.
and my dad was in the military all over the place, as you can imagine. Did a little bit of time in Arizona when I was like 2.
Oh, okay.
He was getting his master's degree in mathematics. He was Army G2 Intel. And then shortly after that, left the Army. We moved back into the Midwest, landed in Kalamazoo in about 1967 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my high school education and early adult years was in Kalamazoo.
Right on.
And I stayed there, started off as a firefighter, then transitioned into law enforcement. Was a law enforcement officer for 18 years.
That's usually the opposite, right? Usually the police officers go become firefighters.
Yeah, well, we had a rather controversial combining of police and fire disciplines into a single public safety department,
Okay.
where just about everybody could do both jobs.
Huh.
And it was a move to get some of the older wood to retire.
Mm-hmm.
The city claimed, and then city manager Bob claimed that they'd be saving the city $1 million a year. Right.
Didn't happen.
It cost $1 million a year more.
I see.
So with city managers, math doesn't often tend to be a strong suit. But ideas, they're the idea guys.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be the guys who get things done, not the policy people. But it afforded me just a fantastic career. I had a dream job for 21 years, and then retired in 1999, moved to Arizona.
Awesome. And you didn't have any military service, is that right?
No, all of my service has been civilian.
Okay. And you have a Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy from where?
Grand Canyon University.
That's right. So what exactly do you study when you study public policy? Is that lawmaking?
Well, part of it's a lawmaking process, but it has to do with functions of government, different types of government, different constructs. So not every city government, for example, has a city manager. Some have a strong mayor. In the city manager model, usually you have a weak mayor. Sometimes you have a larger town council. Sometimes you have advisory boards. But it is, for lack of a better, fuller description, it is the functioning of state, local, and federal governments.
Okay.
And how they interact with each other. So, for example, the responsibility for state government is 3 things. Probably didn't know that because state government's got its nose into so many things.
Mm-hmm.
1 is education, 2 is criminal justice, and 3 is transportation,
Mm-hmm.
roads. That's it.
Yeah, they're doing a lot more than that.
Right?
Yeah.
So if it doesn't fit into those 3 categories, so for example, public safety, you've got the courts, you've got the prisons, you've got funding for law enforcement, you've got law enforcement support. Those are the things that are in that sphere. Education, you could have K through 12 education. ESAs, for example, Arizona's famous for our ESA program and empowering parents to escape the government schools that are failing them.
Yeah. What does ESA stand for?
Educational Scholarship Account.
Okay.
And it has been tried time and time again in the courts, and the courts have upheld that the money belongs to the parents until such time as it is expended for an educational program. It doesn't belong to the state. Once it's issued to the parents, it's their responsibility. And we have a lot of government officials who they either don't get local control, or they don't care about local control. Well, what can be more local in the form of control than a child's education being their parents?
Yeah.
And having the parental guidance of that. One of the things that we saw during COVID, which I don't think the folks that engineered that thought about that. If you're going to lock kids at home,
Yeah.
their parents are going to know what they're being taught.
Yep.
And while I was in the House of Representatives for 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
I had parents. In fact, one of my business partners came to me and said, "Hey, I was just listening to my son's history class." In fact, he was so upset about it, he called me. They were promoting the idea that the United States nuked Japan for no good reason.
Yeah. I've heard that.
And the reason he knew that is because he was standing just off to the side of the laptop, so he wasn't on camera. And he's listening to the teacher promote this radical leftist version of what happened in World War II. Didn't say a word about the calculation was that it would save millions of lives, both American and Japanese, in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just this radical leftist narrative. United States bad, everybody else is a victim.
Now, is that a curriculum issue or is that a specific teacher problem?
Yes.
Both?
Yes.
Okay, so they're given
Okay. Yeah.
given leeway.
Yeah, so we're on the functions of government. So you've got public safety, you've got education, then of course you've got transportation. Excuse me. If you've traveled down the hill to Phoenix, you probably have suffered through the transportation piece.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I find it amusing that the faux governor Hobbs said that she was going to suspend construction and push it out for a few years.
Oh, I didn't realize she said that.
I think that lasted about a day. And people were like, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah.
Okay. It is the only north-south major thoroughfare in the in Arizona that connects east and west United States highways, 40, 10, and 8. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Well, apparently that's not her strong suit, thinking.
Yeah. No, I don't think it is. I think there's probably people doing that for her, making decisions, having her.
Well, then it's not their strong suit either.
Yeah. Right on. So when you were in the House, Arizona Congress, right? Mm-hmm. Is it Arizona House?
No, it's the Arizona House of Representatives. Congress is very specific. That is
specifically federal. Okay.
Federal only. We don't have a Congress. We just have a legislature here.
Okay.
Which is, by the way, where most of the work actually gets done.
So what was your title during those 8 years?
I had several. Representative serving Legislative District 11, which was Northwest Tucson, Marana, part of Pinell County. I served on a number of committees, but the one I'm probably most famous for was the chairman of the Federal Relations Committee.
What does that do?
Well, whenever there was a nexus between state and federal government on particular policies and proposals, bills, those would land in my committee. You may recall November 30th, 2020, I convened an ad hoc committee between the House and Senate to look into the 2020 election in Maricopa County's performance of it. Mm-hmm. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, I was able to pay attention to a lot of what was going on with Kari Lake's trial and the court cases and stuff there. There's a lot of weird stuff going on.
Evidence doesn't seem to matter anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's devolved into a politically, ideologically charged environment.
So when your company is the Election Fairness Institute, and you started that company?
Started that about, we started off as a research shop into educational issues about 3.5 years ago. And then recognizing that there was just way too much going on in the arena of elections relative to irregularities. I'm not going to call it fraud, because fraud is a specific intent crime. But we do know that election fraud exists, and that there are individuals who have perpetrated it. So far, they've, for the most part, gotten away with it. But a lot of that has to do with the very careful placement of individuals into positions, such as county prosecutor, county recorder. A huge shout out to the Yavapai County recorder, Michelle Burchell. That gal's got it going on. She is all over cleaning up registration, the voter registration rolls. She runs a really good shop, and my hat's off to her. The people of Yavapai County are very fortunate.
You think they can be bought, her or anybody else in Yavapai County?
Well, I think people can always succumb to power or prestige or money. All depends on what's going on in their life. I mean, I've had many offers to just go away, but I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And as my good friend Senator Sunny Burelli would say, I don't recall seeing an expiration date on that.
Yeah.
So I'm proud to say that come what may, I intend to fully discharge my oath, whether I'm in office or not.
Cool. Good. Thank you. I also took that oath, not in office in the military.
I see. Must have been a cavalry guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was great.
Horseman or infantry?
Horsemen.
Really?
So mounted. Yeah.
All right.
Not actual horses nowadays, but yeah.
You know what I'm liking it.
We supported the infantry
Yeah.
in their endeavors. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So what kind of education did you started the company initially to research education? You said, what kind of education research were you doing?
Homeschooling. And some of the things that were going on in the homeschooling world. There's this constant push by the left to force children into frankly, a defective ideology, Marxism. And they always want to take children and force them into, even if they're at their parents' home, into a particular learning curriculum.
Yeah.
And as we did a lot of research work, published a few papers, but nothing of real significance in the way money was flowing. That was about the time that the case up in Montana, I believe it's the Mendoza case, where the Department of Revenue up there said that the money belonged to the state, and the court disagreed with them and said, no, money belongs to the parents. The parents are in charge of their children and their children's learning, not the state. I think it was the beginning of the breakdown of full-scale assaults against homeschooling. And interestingly enough, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but at the time we were at 4% of Americans either homeschooled or had some variation of private schooling, not government schools.
Okay.
The last time I looked, we're at like 14, 15, 16%. All of that because of COVID. Parents are like, now that I know what my kids were being taught in school,
Yeah.
that ain't no bueno.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Okay, now we're going to bring that home. And it's, for example, parents like my former business partner. So, but coming on to the early part of 2020, we recognized that there were some significant changes in the political environment, and that partly because I was in the House of Representatives, saw some of the things that were going on. So we changed the name, changed the mission, and now we're a 501c3. We study election process because as a 501c3, you can't involve yourself in politics, namely persons, parties, or proposals.
So how does it work if you're a politician and you own and operate that 501c3?
Well, I have to wear two different hats.
Yeah.
Speaking of hats, I didn't wear my hat today.
Yeah, I thought about wearing one, then I figured it wouldn't go good with this shirt.
But, we're looking at political process, and some of the election forums that we've held around the country that we participated in, this is an issue that cuts through all party lines.
Yeah.
We were in Fort Lauderdale for one of the first ones in Florida a year and a half ago, I think. And there were as many Democrats on the panel as there were Republicans.
That's good.
Telling stories of, shall we say, chicanery,
Yeah.
skullduggery, things that were going on that they knew were going on within their own party, but they were told to sit down and shut up. And that's both Republicans and Democrats, by the way.
Well, at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and we all want to live free.
Well, the party apparatchiks, the higher guys, they want you to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
But the grassroots people, the ones that are of the folks, if you will, they're like, no, I'm not having any of that. No. This is our government. It doesn't belong to the elites, although they would think it does. So it was a natural for my degree work. And then, of course, I went to University of Arizona, Rogers Law School, got my master's degree in legal studies and economics. And that played very well into researching, what's really going on in election process. We can look at process all day long. And we have found a number of defects in process. I'm a Six Sigma guy, which basically Six Sigma is the pursuit of defects in a system or process within a system in the interest of correcting the defect to improve the customer experience. That's in the corporate world.
Yeah.
We've kind of altered that a little bit to improve the outcome so that it is lawful and an individual's 14th Amendment is protected, meaning equal protection under the laws. So what we're engaged in right now is a massive mapping project for the United States, and that is to look at every precinct. We have 3,143 counties or county equivalents in the United States. We've mapped about 10% of them so far.
So you're going to map all of them and figure out how each of them, basically compare and contrast how their voting is set up. That's
probably the most succinct explanation you can give.
Okay.
We want to see how are they performing specifically in the area of voter registration. Now, there are some states that don't have voter registration at all. You simply show up at the polls with your driver's license or your government-issued ID, and they hand you a ballot.
So based on what you've learned so far through the Research Institute, what do you think is the best method, the best way to do voting?
Yeah, there's no best. I think that the most secure and transparent, I think that's where your question's going. Because really, we hear a lot of talk about election integrity. Okay, but wait a minute. That's an output. What are the inputs? The inputs are security and transparency. There are very few things that you can make that are so transparent as paper. Right now, we have machines where you fill out a ballot and you stick it in the machine, and the machine allegedly tabulates that and tells you what the outcome is.
Unless you're a certain political party in a certain location, then it may not.
Like Maricopa County?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That one.
Like the great heat map controversy.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think that I'm going to take my Election Fairness Institute hat off for just a moment and just speak as a citizen. I think perhaps the most important thing that Donald Trump did for the United States, other than all of the good policies, was he pulled back the veil about what was going on in elections and started calling people out and started holding people accountable. And I think because of that, we now see the fruits of that labor coming in the fullness of time. We have so many people who are now activated and involved in elections. When I say grassroots, I really mean at the ground level. Grassroots has got kind of a party connotation to it. I'm talking about those people who they're less concerned about who won. They're after my own heart. They're more concerned about the process.
Yeah.
Is the process transparent and secure? Is it verifiable? Now, because of the various lawsuits, it's been very front and center. We don't have a secure election system.
That's correct.
Hard stop. And going all the way back to Jay Johnson, who was the DHS secretary under the Obama administration, he named election systems as critical infrastructure. Once he did that, there's a whole new overlay of responsibilities there. And one of the things that we've got to get a handle on is cybersecurity. So much so that we, to this day, are told by these machine manufacturers, oh, no, they're secure. No, they're not.
Yeah.
They lie. And we've caught them lying repeatedly, and we've gone to court over it. And an interesting anecdotal story, we were in front of the Gila County Board of Supervisors talking about paper ballots counted by hand on Election Day. That is the most secure, most transparent system available. Now, the machine salespeople would have you believe, oh no, our machines are secure, they're more accurate, they're faster.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, how is it that the entire nation of Norway was able to count their election in one night with paper ballots counted by hand at the precinct level? Something ain't adding up here.
Yeah.
So we're in front of the Gila County Board of Supervisors, get to the end of the presentation, and the chairman asked if I had any other comments. I said, well, I just have one question for you. If you can't compare the paper ballots with the machine count, how do you know the machine's right?
Yeah. That's a great question.
It's kind of an obvious question.
Yeah, you'd think.
And his response was pretty telling.
What did he say?
We don't.
Oh, well, there you go.
At least he was honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a perspective that I think every common man, every voter feels the same way. Unless we can have a side-by-side comparison of the paper ballot with the machine count, we will never know. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, there is a significant effort to prevent that from happening. With my case, with Carrie Lake's case, Abe Hamaday's case, we even went to U.S. District Court to block the use of machines unless we were able to look at the software. And, of course, the software manufacturers are saying, well, that's proprietary. I don't give a bloody damn if it's proprietary or not. If it's proprietary, we probably shouldn't be using it because that is not transparent.
Ultimately, it puts the country at risk.
It does. It does, especially when you lie to elected officials who have to select the equipment and you tell them that it's not connected to the internet. We know that entire episode was nothing but a lie.
So with your institute, the sole purpose of it is research, correct?
Research and publication of what we find, our findings. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not building machines to tabulate in a better way, nothing like that.
No, we were asked if we would like to do that, and it's like, no, I think we have our hands full with just doing the research.
Yeah.
And pointing to, here are the gaps.
Yeah.
I think that we've had a couple of proposals to look at supporting machinery. One of those is to build a replacement for e-poll books. There's so much voter information out there that it's very difficult to manage by the poll books by paper. Well, if you were to put those on a blockchain that's closed, okay, there's some development that can go on there that we might be able to work with, but that's really not our field of expertise.
Would that get rid of the issue of like people who have been deceased having their votes count, or the voters who had multiple votes once they looked at it after the fact?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so it wouldn't verify, hey, this is a real person and they're alive and they actually live at this address.
Well, yes and no. I know that sounds like a political answer. There is fairly new developments in the programming world. One of those I was able to witness about 10 days ago, which is essentially, it's a laser picture of your face.
Oh, boy.
Excuse me. That it creates a hash that is a digital representation of your face. And because it goes right down to the pores, it's that accurate.
Yeah.
So if you had a twin, a doppelganger,
Yep.
it would be able to distinguish between the two of you.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons we're looking at that is because this also plays into the world, and this is another place that we're looking at with campaign finance fraud, and that deals with money laundering. If you're familiar with James O'Keefe's work,
Yeah.
For those who aren't, I'll just give you the brief story. You have a set of, shall we say, individuals, maybe not of means, but they want to give $5 to the Democrat Party.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Republican Party, because we've now found this in both parties. Suddenly, those individuals are giving the max donations. Seems kind of odd. They gave a $5 donation, and then they turn around and give another major one. So James and his crew from OMG Media
Yeah.
started knocking on doors. And they had some folks say, take a look around you. Does it look like I can afford to give a donation like that to a political party?
Or some of these people donated $5 14,000 times, or
Exactly.
something like that.
Exactly. So that's one of the things that we spotted fairly early on. You know, we know from some of the testimony that we've got from interviews that we've done of people that wanted to report something they thought was suspicious. Gift card parties, where they hand out gift cards and they tell people, these are the candidates that we want you to spend this gift card money on. Now, I think it doesn't take a robust thought process to call upon legislators to outlaw that practice, particularly when those gift card numbers can be identified as gift cards. They're not traceable to somebody. It's circumventing, public
accountability,
election finance laws, and accountability.
Okay.
So that's one of the low-hanging fruit things that we've found. But we also know of money laundering and a number of other practices where they're using signatures and photographs. Okay, well, hold on a second. If you were able to have a hash, which is a line of code, that represents you as an individual, it makes your photograph, your signature, your date of birth, the other biometrics superfluous. You don't need them.
Yeah.
It would facilitate more secure online banking. It would facilitate more secure elections. And to your point about the individual who passed away, once that individual is no longer, that hash can't be put onto somebody else. Can't have a date of birth altered. Because that's one of the things that we found in our one of our colleagues in Florida has found in their voter rolls, and I'm sure that we've got it here too, is the alteration of a birth date by one day. That's a nefarious actor. And that's also a new voter registration. So when you do voter roll analysis, which is one of the things that we do, you're looking at the instant occurrences of the same address in a voter roll. So let's say, for example, you have a home that's, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo that's 900 square feet. But you got 30 people that are registered to vote there.
Right.
Okay. There could be some explanations for that. Perhaps people who lived there before. But if they lived there before, you would think they've moved on to another address.
Yeah.
And that they would be receiving mail at that other address.
So the blockchain would prevent that from happening?
It'd be a component to it. It's not going to prevent it.
Okay.
I mean, because think about this. Every time we find a fraud vector where irregularities come from, there's already a bad guy trying to figure out a different way to do it.
Yeah.
So we can shut it down here. It's kind of like whack-a-mole.
Yep.
It's fun playing whack-a-mole, but it gets a little tedious after a while. They come up with new and inventive ways to cheat the system. And we've got some really sharp former criminal investigators, retired guys, that are doing this work, and we think that we're making some pretty significant progress on cleaning up process.
Right on.
At least giving officials who still recognize that there's a moral compass out there,
Yeah.
giving them some direction on where they might look for things that are irregularities.
Yeah. Did you work on election reform at all during your time in the state
I did.
House. What did you do for that? Were there bills associated with it?
There were a number of bills that I authored or had a hand in trying to author. Some of them were heard, some of them were passed.
And that means that you're actually sitting there writing the bill. Is that what you mean when you say authored?
Well, you come up with no, in a word. The origins of a bill are up here.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And the fastest way to get there is to write out a very short paragraph of your concept and what you're trying to solve for.
Yeah.
Then you go meet with legislative counsel. Legislative counsel is a group of lawyers who are specialists in writing statutes.
Mm-hmm.
And they also know legislative history. In many cases, you might have a proposal that you think is a darn good idea, and they say, well, actually 3 years ago, another member wrote a similar bill. Here, let me pull that out for you.
Yeah.
And you can see the folly in what you're, because there's always going to be unintended consequences when you write a bill.
Yeah, and you won't know until after it's already out there.
And then it's trying to get a bad bill that's been passed into law undone is harder than getting the bill passed in the first place.
Yep.
So it lends a lot of credence to, let's get it right the first time. Get it right when you're going in. And if it's not quite right, then don't pass it.
So what were some of the things that you were able to accomplish during that time regarding election reform?
Well, it's been a while, quite frankly, and some of it has probably been altered since I was there. I did write a House Concurrent Resolution, 2033. That would have been in 2021. Sorry, I got to do the math here.
That's okay.
It was after 2020's election, where in the Constitution there is a provision, that's January 6th, in the well of the Senate. The reason that they were there was to listen to objections of the states, and it's not perfunctory. It is...
Perfunctory.
It's not assumed to have already, this is just a ministerial action that we're kind of going through the motions. That's not it at all. Arizona and several other states had some serious questions about election misconduct, not the least of which was Maricopa County. The hearing that we held on November 30th, 2020, generated enough probable cause to give the Senate, 14 days later, a reason to have another hearing. That hearing was held by the Senate Judiciary Chair, where our hearing was ad hoc, meaning it basically was a hearing called by members to listen to constituents. The Speaker of the House at the time objected to it. In fact, he gave zero support. In fact, he even openly mocked it. I wonder what he's saying now. But 14 days later, the Senate Judiciary Chairman, Senator Eddie Farnsworth, in my view, he's a very quiet American hero. He's the one that issued subpoenas to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors and said, you are going to turn this over to us. And as they say, that's when the fight started.
I see. When you were in the Arizona House, do you work with senators directly?
Mm-hmm.
You do? Okay. In what capacity? In formulating policy?
Conversation primarily.
Okay.
You have your favorite go-tos. Mine, Senator Sunny Burelli, probably one of the best senators. I'm sad to see that he's termed out. He's going to be moving on. But
you can serve longer in the House than in the Senate, right?
No, you can serve 8 years in each.
Okay.
Now, there are members who will serve 4 terms because they're 2-year terms.
Okay.
Serve 4 terms in the House and then turn around and run for the Senate and essentially swap with their Senate compatriot.
Okay. And you're running for Senate in 2024, right?
I am running for Senate for Yavapai County in 2024, yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
And but when you're in pursuit of a bill idea, the greatest possibility for success is when you involve a number of members, not just in the House, but also in the Senate.
Yeah.
To get ideas, to say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think it's that much of a problem? More often than not, you're going to have one of your colleagues say, well, yeah, actually, my constituents are pissed off about this, that, or the other thing, so I'm glad you're taking it on. How can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
Those are usually the conversations that you have.
So ideally, everybody up there is kind of working as a team to get stuff passed for the benefit of the American people.
Ideally, but I wish it wasn't just ideally. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot more bickering than compromising.
There is the ego effect.
Yep.
But you've also got special interests that they don't want to see change come.
How do special interests play a role in the Senate and the House in Arizona?
Well, everybody likes to vilify a lobbyist. No, I don't really like the term lobbyist. Excuse me.
So it works the same as it does in the federal government.
They're an advocate for a certain perspective. So
with a lot of dollars.
And there's money that goes behind it, yeah.
Yeah.
But, for example, when you're looking at, say, for example, a transportation bill, how do you prioritize where to spend the money? Do you prioritize it on roads that are used and crumbling? And this is going to sound a bit ridiculous, or do you use it for a road to nowhere that people don't really travel?
I would think the first option.
You would think.
But why wouldn't that be the case?
Because a particular constituency wants action in a particular place.
Okay, so this is people that are not doing the right thing because they're being paid to do something else.
They're not being paid because that would be illegal.
Right.
No, for example, if you've got, we've got a case of it here in Yavapai County. You got a couple of roads that have got the work that they did on 69 is I'm so impressed that they were able to scarify that, grind it down, and repave it. I mean, all in the same day. You got one machine that's rolling it up. You got another machine that's cleaning it up, edging it, getting it ready, and another machine that lays down new pavement. And I don't know how many miles they were doing at a time, but it seemed like 2.5, 3, 4, 5 miles at a time every day.
Yeah.
That was an incredible thing to watch. So if they can do that here, why were some of the other roads not covered? Well, some of the money that was available was sent to another county. That goes into the whole prioritization of things.
Why was that money sent to a different county?
You'd have to ask the people that are in office today.
Okay. Okay. And when it comes to special interests or lobbyists, how do they do that? How do they approach somebody that's sitting in the House or in the Senate and say, hey, we want you to do this over here.
Yeah.
And here's the reward.
So it's not a quid pro quo.
I'm sure.
People go to prison for quid pro quo.
Of course. When it's obvious.
When it's obvious. But, when you have donors for political campaigns
right.
make contributions to certain campaigns, you can start to see, who's behind a particular candidate. Is it the road people? Is it the rock people? Is
right.
it the contractors? Is it the, fill in the blank? Who's got the interest in seeing to it that a particular piece of legislation is written in a certain way and gets passed?
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's always got some kind of a financial interest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things, quite frankly, that I think is seedy about the work done at the legislature. I always tried to avoid that as much as I could. I mean, I knew that there were bills that some of it's priority setting, and some of its priorities I agreed with, particularly if it's within the three spaces of public safety, education, or transportation. What I didn't favor is things that were more of a local control nature. That I'm a big fan of local control. I think that the county government really is the seat of power. The legislature is there for public policy and to equitably distribute tax dollars to get projects done on behalf of the people. It's the counties that set the priorities on which road to get fixed, on which hospital, how to fund the hospital.
Okay.
On do we want to protect the area around an airport? It's those kinds of things. That's at the county and municipal level. So when you see money come into a campaign from a particular special interest group, they're all looking for some kind of an edge. Cattlemen's Association, they're probably looking for people to leave their land alone, which I'm a big fan of.
Right.
So is it necessarily a bad thing that I would accept a campaign contribution from cattle growers or from ranchers or farmers? No, not at all. That's my constituency. And they want to see to it that I get into office and represent their interests.
It's your highest paying constituency.
No.
Or a larger, I'm basically, what I'm saying is the people, the constituents that have the money to donate to a campaign, they're the ones that kind of get the ear of the politician first.
Sometimes.
Or the most.
Sometimes. And unfortunately that happens all too often.
So what would be the difference if you become the senator in Yavapai County versus what you were doing as a House representative?
Well, you need to understand the the structure and purpose of the legislature. The legislature exists to appropriate tax money and to create a budget. That's our primary constitutional role. Appropriations begin in the House of Representatives. The Senate is there to pressure test the legitimate need for those things. It's that we used to joke a little bit about when you're in the House of Representatives, the Senate is the enemy,
right?
Because they want to kill your bills, because they have other priorities. So it's and they call it making sausage. I can support your bill if it'll do this. So you have to amend the bill a little bit. Maybe there's something. Maybe it's a good idea that you didn't think of. But then again, it could be that there is something that somebody in the Senate, you're in the House, somebody in the Senate would like to see something added to your bill. You might not be real happy about it, but at the end of the day, does it act in furtherance of the concept, the public policy? And that's where my degree work at Grand Canyon University, that's where that comes in. It's the understanding of once you put this policy into motion, it's a thing. Yeah. And it's living and it's breathing and it affects people's lives. Whether it's the constituent who is receiving the service, the road, or it's the contractor who's paving the road, or it's the supplier who is delivering services and goods to both the contractor and the constituent.
Right.
Okay, so it's not. People have this idea that it's a very myopic thing. No, you can't. It's exactly the opposite. There are a lot of different people groups to be included into something like that. And, there's I think the Hippocratic Oath that physicians at least used to take. First do no harm.
Yeah.
Okay, so if something's working and your intention is to make it better, define better. Clearly define better. If it's not working, what is it that's not working within the guardrails of the existing law? And if there is no law, then you have to be really cautious about writing new law to address a problem. If you ever have the opportunity to visit the House of Representatives in the clerk's office, there is a bookcase that runs almost the full length of the office. And you've got 5 desks that are like your desk, end to end.
Yeah.
So it tells you about how long that wall is. Lined with all the statute books.
I'm not responsible for knowing all those laws.
Well, that's today.
Yeah.
When I first arrived at the legislature, the clerk of the House showed me the first statute book from Arizona when it became a state. One book, that thick.
Yeah.
That was it.
Now it's a wall full of them.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So is it safe to say that those guys are writing stuff and then you're editing it and then you send it back to them with editorial suggestions for passing it, or you're saying, hey, this isn't a good idea and here's why. That's the most basic.
It's a constant back and forth.
Uh-huh.
So you asked earlier about, well, how does a bill become law? You have your concept. You go to the bill drafters in legislative council, and they're going to write it out for you. And then they'll come to you and say, okay, here's your draft. Let's talk about it. Does it do, in your mind's eye, does it do what you intend to do with your policy position? Sometimes not. So then you have to adjust the ands and the ifs and the nots and the shalls and the mays.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're getting to the heart of the matter that you're solving for.
Yeah.
Then, if you're wise, you'll have one of your colleagues or a few of your colleagues take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If they agree with it, they'll sign on to it as a co-sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty serious thing when you have a number of co-sponsors, because that means everybody's putting their name on that thing.
Yeah.
Then it'll go to, once it's introduced to the clerk's office, you go through first reading where it's assigned to a committee. The committee chairman will decide whether to hear the bill. Not all of them get heard.
Wow.
The chairman may disagree with the policy position.
Even if this is something that the people want and have asked their representative to create.
Yeah, so the people in Yavapai County might want something a little different than the people in Maricopa County.
Right, and they might choose not to even hear the introduction of this bill.
There's this give and play back and forth around, you going to hear my bill? Well, no.
Who gets to decide whether or not something gets heard?
The chairman.
Who's the chairman? Is it per county or is it?
No, it's the chairman of each committee. So, for example, you might have a committee on elections. You're going to have a committee on education, one on public safety, one on military affairs.
So if you're writing a law that deals with public safety, then you're going to go to the public safety committee to try and introduce that bill.
Correct.
And they get to decide whether or not they're even going to listen to you.
The chairman will decide whether the bill will be heard in committee. And if he likes the bill, says, yeah, I see merit to this, then you go before the committee. Legislative council will be there with you, and they will read the introduction of the bill, which basically is a summary sheet. This is what it does. And good legislators have read the bill, and they will have questions. Well, what's the reason for doing this?
Right. Is it necessary?
Is it necessary? Is it proper? Okay. And once you've had that hearing, members of the committee will decide yay or nay, does this advance?
Now, is the chair of a committee elected or appointed?
Chair of a committee is appointed by the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate.
And that's on the state level?
That's on the state level.
Okay.
Same is true in the federal system.
Okay. Okay, and why is it that you want to be in the Senate now?
Well, I've got 8 years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
I moved up here with the intention of, on the heels of my bid for Secretary of State.
Yep.
We're still in court over a couple of things. Do I think that the court's going to do the right thing and cause for a new election? I don't think so. They don't care. They don't care about the mountain of evidence that we presented.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care, which is tragic, quite frankly. So I had a number of folks up here once they found out that I had moved. It's like, hey, we're not very happy with our current representation. Would you consider running?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you get the support for me, if the support's there, yeah, I'll run. I probably have got maybe 4 years more in me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 66 now, so that'd put me at 70.
Mm.
And I know 70 is the new 50, but there is a point in life where I think you would like to step back and perhaps go through rehab.
Yeah.
Once you've been in the public sphere, it takes a little while to unplug from that.
Yeah, it seems like an abuse train going through that kind of a position.
A bit, especially when you got to go to court all the time.
Oh, yeah. So to put it simply, not necessarily because you want to be a senator, but because somebody asked you if you would represent them?
I was asked to serve.
Okay.
And, I've been a sheepdog all my life.
Yeah.
and looking after the lambs.
Who asked you? Who asked you to serve?
A number of people.
Okay,
I'm
like
not-
2 or like 200.
Well, 4, 5,
Okay,
5.
and those 5 people were confident they could get you the support in this county.
They're confident I already have the support.
Okay, right on.
And in polling that we've done, that bears out. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt that President Trump endorsed me for the Secretary of State position. He continues to have a high opinion of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's really quite an honor when you have somebody of Tom Homan's character,
Mm-hmm.
his stature, just offhandedly saying, "Yeah, he still talks about you. He loves you."
That's good.
Now I haven't talked to the president in a while.
He's busy
but
in
there
court.
Yeah, and then there's that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. But we've had a number of conversations,
Yeah.
and he has been very specific about his full faith in me and my motivations for being in office and being there to serve.
Do you have endorsements this year, or excuse me, not for 2024?
We have purposely, it's the holiday season.
Yeah.
I filed the end of July, I think, early August.
Mm-hmm.
Was still getting household stuff squared away, and it just we made a conscious decision that with the holidays coming on, people, I think, are sick and tired of hearing about politics.
Yeah.
It's 24/7 now. It's think back. I remember when the Weather Channel first started.
Well, it's crazy watching the erosion of our country.
Yeah, but I mean, so think back to the Weather Channel.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be you watch the weather at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on the news for 5 minutes, and that was the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
Everything is an emergency. Everything is an alert. You are bombarded by this
Yeah.
all the time. Well,
Yeah.
the same thing is going on now in the political sphere. It used to be that you would have, campaigns that would run for 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
You'd raise a little bit of money. You'd put up some signs. You'd do some commercials, send out some handbills. You'd have an election and it'd be over with.
Now you're starting a year ahead.
Now it is full on all the time. And in talking to a number of constituents who have already signed, I mean, we're already halfway on petition signatures.
Mm-hmm.
When people see me, especially folks that I've known through the Secretary of State race,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hey, we understand you're running for Senate. Where's your petition? I don't have to ask them to sign the petition. They want to sign it.
Yeah.
So we made my team made a conscious decision that we're not really going to ramp up the campaign until after the first of the year.
Right on.
Give people a break, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Enjoy your family. Enjoy your kids. Take some time off. Turn off the television set for just a little while.
Yeah, it's these damn phones, man. Everything is breaking
Well, then
news.
there's that. Yeah.
Is it when an endorsement happens, is it like a signature where they can come to you to sign or you can go seek them out? Does it work either way? Somebody can approach you and say, "Hey, I want to endorse you," or do you generally seek it out?
Yeah, the endorsement doesn't usually happen. I want to endorse you. Usually it's an ask.
Uh-huh.
Except with President Trump. The inside story I'll share with you, I was made aware very early in the campaign for Secretary of State that he intended to endorse me.
I think he saw the writing on the walls.
Well, this goes all the way back to 60 days after I filed my intent to run. He respected the work that I had done on election transparency and security, saw that I was kind of leading the charge on outing the political bad actors and calling for a change to the system.
Yeah.
Now, this is as a legislator. And we had a conversation several months before he actually endorsed me, and he says, I plan to endorse you, but I want the timing to be right. So the funny story is, about 5:30 in the morning, October 10th, I'll never forget it. My phone is blowing up. Speaking of phones, did you see this? A text message. and there was a Fox News alert. President Trump set to endorse Mark Finchem for Arizona Secretary of State.
I bet that was exciting.
To say the least, my immediate response was panic.
I bet.
Because I knew that this was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, they've got to know that my team did not leak this.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my contacts with the president and went to voicemail. Finally, one of them called me back, and she was laughing hysterically. She said, "No, Mark, we know you didn't leak it. He did."
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, no heart attack today then.
No, that would have
and then maybe 20 minutes later, I get a call from him, and he said, "Hey, I understand you were concerned about a leak." Well, sir, it's your show. I didn't really want to preempt anything.
Yeah,
so.
That's a good idea. What do you think the most important issue is that Arizona has right now? The biggest problem in Arizona right now?
Border security.
Border security.
We are being overrun by individuals who mean us harm.
Mm-hmm.
And Alejandro Mayorkas is a liar and a traitor.
Indeed.
Whoever's running the White House, I know it's not Biden. That guy can't even find the podium without having a leader.
Mm-hmm.
They are contributing right now to the overrunning of not just our border, but our cities.
Yeah.
Now, what I think is interesting is we've got finally Chicago, New York, Denver are, well, we didn't know this is what would happen in a sanctuary city. Really? We told you this repeatedly.
Yeah.
Phoenix.
Yeah, they're not close to the border.
Yeah.
Did you see James O'Keefe reported, I think just yesterday on Sky Harbor, a company called Jet Limousine is ferrying immigrants to...
I'm aware of the report.
To the airport.
So for the last 2 years with the Election Fairness Institute, I've been on a plane not every weekend, but almost. And my flights, usually because they're going east, originate somewhere between 5 o'clock and 7:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Without fail. Not missing a single flight. 4, 5, 7 illegals with papers, documents around their neck, escorted onto my plane, seated. Clearly they do not speak English, being flown all over the country.
Where do you think this is coming from? Like, who's doing this?
It's coming from the Biden administration. These are taxpayer dollars that are being spent to traffic children. Think about that for a minute.
I do.
The federal government doesn't exactly have a good history with trafficking children.
Yeah.
Pizzagate.
Right.
Right?
For sure. My first thought was that it would be like a Soros-funded type of thing.
No.
It's not.
This is funded by the U.S. government. Taxpayer dollars.
So why do you suppose the U.S. government would seek to pull out the carpet from underneath its own feet rather than Soros or something like that?
Why do you suppose that I would have to go through a robust security system to get on a plane, but these people are escorted by an American Airlines employee?
Well, that doesn't answer my question, but I don't know.
Think about who runs TSA.
Who runs TSA?
Federal government.
Yeah.
Now, what are their motives?
Right, that's my question. What would the motive be? I can't even think of, because they're like destroying themselves if it's being funded by them.
The people who are operating the federal government, I believe they're of the opinion that they're going to have a job no matter what. Well, until such time as the dollar collapses, until such time as the government itself disintegrates.
Yeah.
Because it's been overrun.
Yeah.
I mean, we estimate right now the federal numbers that they're coming out with illegal border crossers. I'm not going to call them immigrants because they're not.
Yeah.
30 million.
Yeah.
That's almost 10% of the United States now.
Do you think that it's American people in the government being paid to make these decisions? Or do you think it's like individuals who have been susceptible to the Marxist culture?
Yes. I mean, you look at the Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
And it's all about wokeism.
Yeah.
All right. Now, consider this for a moment. Have you ever heard of Cloward and Piven?
Yes. Couldn't tell you what they are.
Okay. Cloward and Piven were a couple of radical leftists in an Ivy League school that said if you, basically their thesis was, and it's now a theorem, through illegal border crossing, you can swamp a government and take it down.
Yeah. That's what's happening.
And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So you've got individuals within the federal government who I believe are treacherous. You've got a lying traitor who is the director of DHS.
Yep.
You've got a weaponized DOJ that does absolutely nothing except go after moms and dads who are at school board meetings. So we have the disintegration of the federal system that is ongoing right now.
Yeah.
Many of us believe, I would say the thought leaders in this country believe, that it very soon will be incumbent upon county leaders to really lead.
Yeah.
And I question whether they are prepared. Because they're going to have to make some tough calls, and it's going to have to rise above the petty little political games that goes on at the county level.
I agree.
I think that the state legislature is also going to have to grow a spine. We got too many people that have got self-interest that are at work there. And I predict that it just broke today. It's 45 or 47 congressmen and women have decided they're not going to run for re-election.
Really? I didn't hear that.
That's the sound of rats leaving a sinking ship.
I hope that's what it is.
Well,
I hope it's not people being...
I wish it weren't a sinking ship.
Yeah.
But it's the people who have been sucking on the government tit for a long time who should have been doing something about this and didn't, and now it's about to collapse on their watch.
Yeah.
God help them.
Yeah.
Because I have no intention to.
So working in the Senate, what'll be your main focus doing work for Arizona?
Well, my priorities are going to be, number one, protect school choice. There is a move. There's always been a move as long as I've been there.
Now, school choice for the parents, right? The parents' choice.
For parents and children. Reinforce parental authority and the choice of parents to, educate their kids, their children, through the means that they view most appropriate. That could be ESAs, that could be educational scholarships through organizations like ACSTO. But we need to protect that and protect the parental authority. The left is always wanting to try and put requirements on election or on education. Well, parents need to be held to the same standards as the government schools. No. Look at what's going on in the government schools.
Yeah.
I think the parents can transcend that. Then we have border security.
Yeah.
That's a huge issue. But I think a lot of it comes back to local control. The legislature all too often tries to dictate to the counties and municipalities a one-size-fits-all policy.
Right.
Perhaps the legislature needs to take a pause and pay attention to the three things: education, public safety, transportation. Get those right. Leave the local stuff, fire districts, hospital districts, those things at the county level. Leave that at the county level. Leave them alone. I mean, there was this move, and this comes out of the federal government, and I don't think they're done with that yet. The federal government wants to seize control of zoning.
And that's not good.
What could possibly go wrong with that?
Well, you could sell them all to Chinese, to the CCP. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues that we've got right now is they want to put high density housing in traditionally single family residence neighborhoods. It's all about equity,
Oh yeah.
Okay. that's a case that's probably the best case I can give you. That's where government units need to stay in their own lane.
Mm-hmm.
Local zoning, the federal government has no interest in that.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at the same time, we've got a situation, and this is going to be a problem in the coming years. We have large ranches.
Yep.
That generationally they may be unsustainable. Meaning the kids don't want a ranch.
They'd rather have the money from selling it.
Yeah, but here's the problem. You sell that ranch land, and is it going to be developed? Now, I've got... This is one of the reasons I was asked to run, believe it or not, Prescott Valley. People are outraged at the amount of traffic.
Yeah.
And the idea of indiscriminate, continuous development. It's interesting. The constituents can see what elected officials apparently can't. The traffic is out of control.
It's always how it works from the top down.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
like in the military, you got the guys sitting behind desks making decisions for the guys that are on the ground, and a lot of times it doesn't go well.
Yeah. So, we've got, but at the same time, we've got large tracts of land that ranchers are going to want to liquidate. So, especially if, you're getting to an age where I can't ranch anymore. I hit that age a few years ago and turned over all of my ranching concerns to younger relatives. I think that what we've got a looming problem, and that is that liquidation can't go to the federal government. Folks want to say, well, we'll just sell our land to the feds. All right, time out. And under the U.S. Constitution, the legislature first has to give permission for that sale to happen. Under Arizona law, the legislature has to pass a bill signed by the governor to permit that sale.
Each individual sale.
Each individual sale of land to the federal government. So under the enclave clause of the Constitution, the government may only possess land. I'm not talking about BLM and the Forest Service. Those are agencies that, quite frankly, are illegitimate, but Congress has allowed them to exist.
Yeah. How does land leasing play a part into this?
Well, there's some interesting ideas, and one of them, I think about this for a second. If you've got land that is generating property tax for the state of Arizona, you sell it to the federal government under, and then basically it falls under the PILT system. We call it pittance in lieu of trillions, but it's the public land. It's where the federal government pays the state that portion of property tax that's lost in the possession of land. Well, the whole thing that makes the United States, that makes a state, is its land. People seem to forget that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if the federal government,
the more of it that the federal government owns, the more comes into play something that Elbridge Gerry spoke of in the Madison debates in 1787. I want to say it was like May 9th. They were talking about the enclave clause, and that the federal government needed to, from time to time, own property. And Elbridge Gerry's like, well, hold on a second. If there aren't limits that are put on that, the day could come where the general government could awe the state into submission. Do you know how much land in Arizona is in private hands?
No.
Less than 13%.
And the rest of it is either
federal, state, or local government units. Vast majority of it is held by the federal government.
That's not good.
No, it's not.
So if I want to buy a ranch, I was looking at some recently, and it shows like, okay, well, there's this many deeded acres on the ranch, but then there's this many land lease acres.
Right.
Who's leasing that land to the ranch owner?
Could be a number of typically it's the federal government.
Okay.
Okay. There could be a land lease agreement with the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose if a county owned land, they could be leasing it back, but I don't know that there's a whole lot of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
Deeded acres are the acres that one can own,
Yeah.
that you can get title to.
And then the other acreage is stuff that you can have your cattle graze on or
Correct.
whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you farm that leased land? Can you plant crops on it?
Well, it depends on what the terms of the lease are.
I see.
Okay. So one of the ideas that's been floated, and I have mixed feelings about it. I know that the federal government would they're never satisfied with what they have, whether it's power, land, whatever, money. It's never satisfied.
Power seeks power.
Insatiable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What if, and I'm not saying that I favor or disfavor this, but what if the state of Arizona established a public lands purchase organization so that the people of the state of Arizona, where a ranch is going to go sold, instead of going to the federal government, the people of Arizona, under a land bank program, purchase that land, and then they can turn around and lease that to guys like you. Instead of it being a 2,500 acre ranch, maybe you want a 500 acre ranch.
Right.
And maybe once you're successful, you want to add another 500 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That way we keep it in production. We keep it in the hands of the state of Arizona.
Keep it from being developed.
We keep it, probably keep it from being developed, because its highest and best use is more than likely open space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the, going back to the conversation we had about people that were recruiting me to run for the Senate. Terrified is a strong word, but it approaches terrified that the folks that live in the Prescott Valley area in general moved here. Why? Because of open space
Mm-hmm.
and the lifestyle that they sought. Okay. Now, I'm not against development, but there's got to be some restraint there. If your roads can't handle the traffic as it is, adding another 1,000 rooftops into an area is only going to exacerbate the problem.
Well, we also have to
what's the plan?
We also have to look at situations like COVID, when supply chains could have been an issue. We realize all this stuff is coming out of China. We don't have any control over that if it gets cut off. And looking at Yavapai County, how much of the stuff that we consume, whether it's food, water, or medicine or other products, how much of that is sourced and made in Yavapai County? And looking at the long term of all of this type of stuff, you have to recognize that further developing these things into giant swaths of housing is maybe not the best long-term solution for the people that live in these types of areas.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up in Kalamazoo, West Main and Drake Road, a massive popcorn farm. They grew popcorn.
Really?
And alfalfa and other things, but it was a massive farm.
Yeah.
It stretched 1 mile from one intersection to the edge of the farm, and I don't know how deep it was. Tells you how big it was. Got turned into a mall. And I remember thinking as a high school kid, this is a farm kid mentality, I guess. One of these days they're going to be tearing that thing down and turning it back into farmland.
Right. Right.
Now, I don't know if they have or not, but
I get the idea.
we are now seeing, with the advent, and this again goes back to public policy and the study of it,
Mm-hmm.
we are now seeing the implosion of the mall-based economy. Stores are, here's an example. CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens have all made announcements about closing thousands of stores nationwide. Why? One, because of Amazon. organizations like Amazon, Amway, that do home delivery
Yeah.
of health and beauty aid products, medications. You now have delivery of medications at almost every level, even in the instant. You know, you go to the doctor's office, and, for example, if I wanted to get a prescription filled at Fry's, depends on the community, but they've announced a service where they're delivering your prescriptions, you just see it in 24 hours, along with your groceries and other things.
Yeah.
Okay? So when you start to look at how is the marketplace shifting on commercial property? Well, you now have, with the gig economy, a large number of people who don't transport themselves to work in a car anymore.
Weird.
They kind of walk into the next room and they're at work.
Well, the more, yeah.
So you now, I think you see where I'm going with this. You're going to develop all of this infrastructure to 20 years from now, it's obsolete. You're going to have to be able to, as you said, source your fresh foods locally.
Good luck.
Good luck with that, because if you don't have some greenhouses set up, where we're blessed in Arizona, particularly down in the West Valley, I mean that is feeding the entire state. You look at fields of broccoli and spinach, and that stuff, it gets picked and it's on the store shelves within 24 hours.
You're talking about west of Phoenix?
Yeah.
Who
Buckeye, Surprise out in that area.
Yeah. I know of a couple farms out there. Do you know the name of these farms?
No, but I've driven by them time and time again.
Okay.
It's interesting to see the harvesting mechanisms, and agriculture has always fascinated me about how we can take broccoli, pick it in the morning, and before the sun sets, it's already on the store shelves.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's amazing.
That's awesome.
You want to talk about fresh? That's about as fresh as it can get.
Yeah.
The only way it'd be fresher is if you picked it yourself.
Well, there's this idea I've heard of the area north of Prescott and in between Chino Valley and Prescott. Mm-hmm. People say, well, eventually it's going to be houses from one to the next, and all that land's going to be built on. I've heard that. I think about those types of things, or from Prescott Valley all the way to the base of Mingus Mountain. It's all going to be developed eventually into housing. So,
well, people want to, it's interesting that they want to preserve the lifestyle which they have grown accustomed to, but at the same time they want development.
Well, some people just want to make the money, regardless of what happens, because if they have the money, they can either move on or they can source the things that are becoming harder to source.
Right. So one of the things that I think that, from a public policy perspective, when you've got underdevelopment in the city center or underutilization of buildings, either city property or county property, if you want, higher density housing, perhaps you look at some of that property. I know there's a couple of folks that are looking for rezoning of commercial properties to turn them into consolidated residences. So, I mean, there's a lot of solutions. It doesn't all have to be new rooftops.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm not against development, but I do favor, as a matter of my own desire to maintain the lifestyle that is here. There's a reason that I moved here. I want to see that preserved. I want to see that promoted. So it's going to be a prickly conversation between those who want to see it developed and those who don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big point of contention up here. Going back to the homeschool thing real quick.
But by the way, that needs to be local control.
Yes, definitely not federal.
And definitely not the state legislature getting involved in it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
That is a local control matter. And, if you want to preserve, and this goes out to all the voters, if you want to preserve things the way they are, you need to elect people who are willing to take a tough stand and say we don't object to development, but we want to have balance.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we don't make the situation worse, especially with traffic, healthcare, shopping alternatives,
resources,
all those resources. We got to be very careful with that.
To put a lid on the homeschool stuff, is there currently curriculum requirements for homeschoolers in Arizona? Like you have to meet certain standards?
Yeah, there's some.
Uh-huh.
But that's the joy of the program. So, for example, if I wanted one of my children to have a solid education in civics, I could go out and choose the Hillsdale version of high school civics.
Yeah.
It's an online course.
Yeah.
You pay for the course. As a parent, you help supervise that. There are also combination academies where you have a few days in classroom and a few days at home, where parents and teachers work together. There's all kinds of, see, this is the rich ideas that come out of an open school, an open education system that really respect the role of the parent in education. And, back in the early 1900s, they moved into what I call factory learning.
Yeah.
To support workers that were semi-intelligent or intelligent for the coming industrial age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, we're post-industrial. All the jobs have been shipped to China or someplace else. Some would even say we're postmodern. Now we're at this place where I think parents who have been empowered to participate in their children's education, they're going to be the savior of this nation. Because if you don't understand your civil rights, if you don't understand the Constitution, if you don't understand civics, how government is constructed, how it's intended to operate, how the heck are you going to run a country with imbeciles that don't know, people who are ignorant to those things?
Yeah, and if you don't know what you have, you don't know what you have to fight for.
And it's helpful to know how many fights we've been in and what the cost of those fights were.
Yeah.
Because I think anybody who can sit there and look at the calculus, do I really want to get engaged in an argument with fill in the blank nation?
Yeah. When, as a senator, how would you interact with your constituents and how frequently?
Well, the same way I did when I was in the House of Representatives.
How's that?
Regular meetings with constituent groups. So, for example, every legislative district has a monthly meeting with their PCs, with people who are interested in politics in the community. I've been to probably a dozen events around the Prescott, Chino Valley, Cottonwood area, where people had the opportunity to, meet with me, come up to me, talk to me.
So that would
and I'm
be
handing my phone number out all the time. So, and they do call me at 2:00 in the morning.
You're brave. So,
but there's that, and then of course I think one of the key responsibilities for a legislator is to meet with local officials, because they're the ones who really are the hub of understanding of what the challenges are.
Can you have an example of an official?
Well, for example, Supervisor Oberg. Harry Oberg is a great county supervisor.
Okay.
Phil Good, Mayor of Prescott. He is not afraid to meet with anybody and is willing to talk with everyone.
Yeah.
Tell me what your concerns are. That is the sign, I think, of good representation. When you go into a meeting with a group, and I've seen this time and time again, I try to avoid it myself. You have somebody who stands there and for half an hour they blather on about their position.
Yeah.
I think, and I've gotten this feedback from my constituents, I'll usually give 5 minutes on me and my thoughts and 25 minutes for them to ask me questions.
That's funny because down here at the lower levels of just being a citizen, I look at my representative meeting with a local official and all I see is bureaucracy and politics rather than like, okay, well, that official isn't hearing me and that politician isn't hearing me. So the way to be heard by you or any other congressman or senator, representative, would be to go to some local event that's held by a political group?
Not even that.
What kind of events are these?
Meet and greets. People will have a house party and want to invite me. Hey, I've got a bunch of neighbors that are upset about development along 69.
Okay, so you're open to
Oh yeah.
to meeting people in different
If
formats.
I'm invited and I'm available, I'll go.
Okay.
And I think that the important thing is
How would you pursue the opinions of your constituents? Do you have a way that you would seek out what people want?
yeah, on my website.
Okay.
There's a contact button there, and I urge people, fill out that contact piece. Give me your name, your phone number, your email address. Tell me what your issue is.
Yeah.
And if I can find out where you live, and we can put together a group of people that
In
have
that
the
area.
same issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked a number of constituents, would you like to have a house party so that we can talk about what's important to you?
Yeah.
If you're not hearing, the standard for me is 4 questions for every statement. So for every one statement I make, I want to hear 4 questions from people coming at me. Why this? What about this? How about that? This is what matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if from time to time I've just stood there and listened to people blow off steam, they're so angry.
Yeah.
And then and I don't ask them, well, does that make you feel better? That's kind of flippant.
Yeah.
But I've seen political types saying, well, you're wrong. Really? You're telling your constituent that their perception of things is wrong.
Yeah.
That's not how this is designed to work.
Right.
This is designed to work for you to get out in front of your constituents and ask them, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
What about the cost of living? What about the cost of fuel? What about, how do you feel about what's going on at the border? Are you happy with the educational system?
Yeah.
Are you happy with the roads? When's the last time you had an interaction with law enforcement? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I am about to lose my voice.
Okay. Well, then I'll jet through the rest of these real quick.
Okay.
What are your opinions on the different people that are either in office or running, like Mark Lamb running for state senate or Carrie Lake running for state senate? Do you have a preference or who you like better or why?
I'm going to stay out of that one for the time being.
Oh.
Only because they are both friends, and we haven't gotten into, I think, the fullness of campaign.
Because they're fighting for the same position, right?
They're fighting for the same position, and there's from what I understand, there's a couple more people that are in there. 2 of them are my friends as well. So it's not that I won't pick one, but as I said at the beginning of the interview, I'm trying to stay out of politics until after the first of the year.
Right on. Well, that's unfortunately most of my questions. So when it comes to people that you're running against, which would be the guy who's sitting in the Senate office right now, and then a couple other people, I think, if you don't make it, or if you do, how willing are you to be in support of that position either way? And what I mean by that is, will you work with these other people that are running for the same position to hear out their ideas or to receive advice or to give advice to these people?
Of course.
Right on. Okay, let's see.
Let me put a fine point on that. Governing is a team sport.
That's what I'm getting at.
And if you're going to be, you can't be an all-star. I hear people say, well, I got this bill passed. Really? So what about the other 30 people that voted for it?
Yeah.
What about the governor that signed it?
Yeah.
What about the 16 people that voted for it in the Senate? So when I hear people say, I got this done, that's a huge turnoff for me.
Yeah.
When I hear representation, either a representative or a senator say, we got this done.
Yeah. Big difference.
And it's flanked by some of the people who were key in getting that done.
Yeah.
And gives credit to other people. My respect for that individual grows immensely.
Goes back to the ego humility kind of dichotomy there.
Yeah.
What's your stance on Sheriff Rhodes?
I've met Sheriff Rhodes. He seems like a personable guy. I've not had any interactions with him other than, political events. He was at the Yavapai County Community College event to discuss the imposition of transgender and sexually explicit stuff in the schools.
Yeah,
and
the
really
protect our children thing.
I was very happy with some of the comments that he made. I know that he's been in the sheriff's office for a number of years. We've had a couple of conversations. I don't know who else is running in that race yet, just because I have kind of...
Staying out of politics.
Well, I tuned out of the politics stuff, and I'll get spun up on it after the first of the year.
Right on. Okay, let me get the rest of these. What do you believe happens when you die?
Depends.
Yeah.
I'm saved by Jesus Christ.
Okay.
So I know where I'm going.
Cool. That answers that. Thank you. Oh, let's see. Now, we talked a little bit about the oath and the domestic enemies. Other than trying to vote these people out with a voting system that we don't trust, how can we get rid of these domestic enemies that are sitting in political office? What can we do about that?
Challenge them. So there's something that happened down in LD11 several years ago. We had some mama bears show up who wanted to be PCs, precinct committeemen.
Mm-hmm.
And during the meeting, I made reference to, well, you can always take a friend. Go to a school board meeting, go to a town council meeting, and you can always take a friend. From that, these ladies came up with the idea of bring a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And over the space of 4 or 5 months, they went from the 3 of them to 15 of them to 30 of them to 50 of them, so much so that the amphitheater school district went into panic mode and said, well, we're going to have to start meeting virtually because we don't have the room to accommodate all of the parents. That was the cover. They didn't like the uncomfortable conversations around sex in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I think that, every constituent owns their government.
Yeah.
It's we the people.
Right.
Okay. In fact, I think it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I can't believe I'm citing her, but she, in the IRDC decision, I believe it was Ginsburg, coined a statement that ultimately the people are the ultimate legislature.
Right.
That means if you're not going to represent your own interest in the halls of government, and you're going to turn that over to somebody else and not pay attention, that doesn't work out so well.
Yeah.
Be engaged. And I know, look, you got soccer, you got church, you got work.
And before you know it, you've got people trying to teach your kids it's okay to change their gender.
Right.
So pay attention.
Exactly. Exactly.
Take 10 minutes, whatever it is.
Be a part of the body politic. And, you've got a grand opportunity to teach your kids civics. Go to a school board meeting. Yeah, it's going to be butt-numbingly boring, but there's going to be a lesson there. Mm-hmm. It's a teachable moment. Your kids are going to see the dais. You're going to see the interaction of people. They're going to see people going up to the podium to share their story. And then you have that conversation with your kids.
Yeah.
This is what government looks like, or at least it's supposed to. So I think being involved, if you can afford to, run for an office. Yeah.
It's a lesson for the school board as well. Mm-hmm. And they recognize these people are really showing up.
Yeah.
I'm less likely to step on toes if they're all coming to my doorstep.
Yeah, they're less likely to push a controversial agenda
Mm-hmm.
If you get a large number of parents showing up. Now, some parents will get vocal. I get it. You want to conduct yourself, your demeanor needs to be respectful.
Yeah.
But your presence is holding people accountable.
Yes.
Because if you're not there, they really don't think you care.
Right. Yeah. And if you want to have that kind of freedom and that kind of autonomy, then you have to be responsible for it. And you have to show up. All right. Let me get this. You were thinking about running for the Maricopa recorder position? at one point?
There was a rumor about that.
Not the case?
No, I was asking for a friend. I know it sounds trite, but
All right.
just asking for a friend. There's an individual who asked me, I don't want my name out there, but I'm thinking about running for county recorder.
Mm-hmm.
Would you support me? And I'm like, well, I can support you in helping do research and all that. But frankly, I think Maricopa County is so corrupt, I'm not so sure that anything is going to help that other than a clean sweep of those offices, which appears to be something that's forming up now. So no, Maricopa County Recorder was not on my personal radar.
Okay.
Now there was an individual who approached me here not long ago and said, "Hey, we don't have a candidate to run against Richard. Would you consider it?" No.
Well,
I've moved.
that guy needs to be that guy needs to be repealed. He needs to be stripped of his position. It's an elected position.
He also needs to be disbarred.
I didn't even know he had a law degree.
It's my understanding he's got a law degree and he's a lawyer.
Okay. Well, either way, that
I don't
guy's
know. I haven't verified that, but that's another
rumor.
room. Somebody asked me for a friend.
So that's the thing. You have somebody in that elected position that's obviously doing a huge disservice to the people and destroying this place.
Yeah.
And being paid to do so, most likely. That's so. Voting them out, especially if you're involved in the voting system, is not really an option. There has to be another option short of mob violence.
Well, be present at their meetings and hold them accountable.
Right on.
Be persistent. Take personal responsibility, because if you don't, if you're going to leave it to somebody else to do it, it ain't going to get done.
Yeah, they're going to govern you.
Right.
Yeah, rather than represent.
You'll be a subject, not a citizen.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got here. What kind of rumors do people say about you that are not true, or what kind of things are out there that people would say, "Oh, there's a skeleton in your closet," that you would say are not true?
Go to Wikipedia.
Can't trust them.
It'll tell you everything that's not true about me.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Some leftist had a field day on that one. Well, and you can look at the Atlantic, New York Times, WAPO, any of the Slate, any of the propaganda pieces.
The media.
BBC.
Yeah.
You look at that, even 60 Minutes. I mean, you look at those things, it's all propaganda.
Yeah.
And we are right now engaged in fifth generation warfare. In fact, there's a great book that people
so
need
glad
to get.
you said that. What book is that?
5GW by Sergeant Boone Cutler and General Mike Flynn.
Okay.
They can go to generalflynn.com and order the book. Version 2 is out now about the AI war, artificial intelligence.
Oh, man.
These are textbooks that are written for citizens to resist fifth generation warfare, which is basically warfare of the mind.
Yeah. Yeah. and for our attention. Sorry, just going through my questions here, seeing what's most pertinent. As far as getting signatures, how is that happening? Are you paying anybody to retrieve signatures for you?
I don't need to, man.
No.
I don't need to. There's enough people that support me that they're out there doing it on their own.
So that's a no.
That's a no.
Okay, thanks.
I don't need to pay people to do that.
Right on. Oh, let's see. Gone there. I know where you stand on all the woke stuff, obviously fighting for the education freedom of the parents, strength of our border. We talked about all that. Can you speak to any of the stuff happening with our current Senate representative as to like what's this person engaged in that's not for the people? Anything like that?
Well, after looking at how they spent money that should have come to Yavapai County in the last budget,
yeah,
and that it was sent elsewhere, I question their priorities. And there's a lot of angst that I've heard from other elected officials here locally that they're, let me use the term, righteously indignant about not being contacted about priorities. In fact, I guess one of the individuals said, "Well, I don't have to check in with you."
Huh.
Seems a little arrogant to me.
Well, in the space of arrogance, then they can check in with me. The last thing. Talked about that. Oh, okay. Some people have said that you moved up here just so that you could run for Senate. Is that the case?
No, that's not the case. All you have to do is look at Phoenix, which is where I was living,
Yeah.
and only an insane person would want to continue to live there.
I agree.
I mean, I like the cooler climate. I like the personality
Yeah.
of Prescott. I've wanted to live here for a number of years, and now I have the ability to. I had been leasing a place in downtown Phoenix because we thought that I would be at the office every day in the Secretary of State's office. Now that does not appear to be happening,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how about we go where we want to go?
Yeah. Good.
Here
Well,
I am.
well,
So,
welcome. It's a good
thank
spot,
you. I love this place.
and I hope it stays awesome.
I love it. Well, if we work together, it will.
Yeah. And I think my last question is, if the opportunity arose for you to sit in a meeting similar to this with the other candidates for the Senate position, would you do that?
Probably.
Okay.
You
Right
mean a
on.
debate?
Not necessarily. I don't like debates, at least not in the way that they're structured.
Yeah, they're not really debates. They're gotcha panel sessions.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's
I will tell you
that's
that-
not good for people.
I'll tell you this right now. The whole clean elections debate thing, not a fan. It's always a predisposition towards a political agenda.
Yeah.
And, in fact, I'm not a big fan of clean elections in the first place. So, although I did use
That's a hilarious thing to say. I think you should clarify.
I did use clean elections. Well, clean elections in the context of
As a title.
as Arizona's program that's funded by the government.
Yeah, so the government program clean elections.
yeah.
You are a fan of clean
I
elections,
am
which
a
is
fan
why
of crystal clean elections.
which is why you
Yeah.
run the Election Fairness Institute. That's a
Good catch.
don't
Good
you don't
catch.
want to stuff put
And
your foot in your
I'm
mouth.
not going to take that as a gotcha.
Right, no.
No, I have always found it, when I first ran, I ran as a clean elections candidate. And about midway through it, once you're committed, then and this is when I was a newbie to politics.
Is this like Stephen Richer clean elections?
No.
Sorry. Couldn't help it.
No. This is the Clean Elections Program, CCEC.
What is that?
It's the program that you get government money to run for political office if you collect X number of $5 bills. I think it's $255 bills, and you have them sign off on a sheet. It was a program that was brought into practice, I'm told, by Democrats, but both Republicans and Democrats have benefited from it. But when I found out what funds it, that's what I found particularly offensive. Money from traffic tickets.
Oh.
It's another government program, and of course there are probably people that work there that are making six-figure incomes. I'm not a fan, so I'll be running traditional. And if there is a panel discussion around performance, positions, policies, I'm happy to participate. But when it comes to the clean elections panel, I'll probably opt not to participate in that one.
Right on. Yeah. More what I'm talking about is sitting down in a relaxed setting like this where, somebody like me were to mediate and have okay, well, we're both going for the same thing because ultimately we want the same thing, and that's to represent our people and what's best for the region.
Right.
So how can we put our heads together regardless of who wins? We're on the same freaking team.
We'll have to see how it's structured.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, though, that for the time being, I'm doing a lot of traveling because we got 50 states that are trying to get their elections messes sorted out.
Yeah. Do you think that your time would be best spent focusing on that or focusing on the Senate position? Because obviously election fairness is extremely crucial.
Yeah, it's a great question. What we're trying to do is build an organization where I'm not the one that has to fly all the time.
Okay. Right on.
For the time being, between me and Seth Keschel and some of the other folks that we've got on our team, we're doing double duty, triple duty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the next 6 months, the majority of my time will be spent on campaigning.
And you'll pass that position off to.
Well, that we're already kind of there.
Okay.
But there are some critical things that we're engaged in right now that I'm a deep player in.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with campaign finance fraud.
Okay.
So once we're able to offload that private investigation to an attorney general or two, that'll free up a lot of my time.
Okay. And to put the lid on that other thing about money being sent to a different county for our current representative, what money is that? Where did that money come from?
Well, it's taxpayer money.
Okay, so taxpayer money went to a different.
That was in the budget
Okay.
that could have come to Yavapai County was instead sent someplace else.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark Finchem, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming here and doing this
I appreciate the opportunity.
For all the people. So
hopefully you can edit out all the coughing.
I think I can. I'll do my best.
All right.
Well,
Thank
take
you
care.
very much.
Indeed.
You bet.